afternoon, and thank you for attending Energy Careers 2020 and today's session on women in energy. My name is Becky Megason, and I am a consultant with CWD and will be your moderator for today's program. I myself spent over 36 years in this industry and am honored to be here today with this great panel of women leaders. Before we begin, I want to offer a few housekeeping logistics as the world of virtual meetings is new and challenging to most of us. Our panelists and I have pre-recorded our remarks, but we are here live with you today as well. We will be responding to your questions and comments in the chat feature, so please feel free to ping us with anything you'd like to know more about. We are eager to answer your questions and help you understand more about careers in energy, especially those for women. We have an outstanding panel of women with us today that are anxious to share their career stories and advice. You will find more information about this accomplished group of women in the Speaker Bio tab on the right of the screen. So let's get started. I'd like to begin by asking each of our panelists to introduce themselves and share a brief overview of their career journey so far. Let's begin with Isabel Rooney.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I'm excited to do this for you and with you. So I've been blessed to be in the same company for 30 years, and although some may think that that's probably really boring, it's been anything but. I've had the opportunity over those 30 years to work in a variety of different roles in a variety of different areas of the organization and really learn all different facets of the utility business, which have allowed me to grow professionally in my career as well. So I started in an electric distribution division, one of the 6 divisions that our company had at that time, as an associate engineer, bottom of the ladder. That's where you enter out of college, and that's where I started as well. And I rotated every 18 months into the different facets and different areas of the division, whether it's operations or overhead or underground or substations, whatever it was. And it really became a wonderful foundation for me in my career. From there, I worked in asset management. I was then blessed to have my first opportunity into the management role as a manager in the organization, doing process improvement. From there, I was asked to travel overseas to Brazil, where I lived for a year, first performing due diligence on some companies that were privatizing at that time, and then transitioning one of the companies that we purchased at that time. I came back to the States and was asked to go to the call centers, customer operations, a different area altogether, something I did not have experience in. From there, I was asked to go to PSEG Global in a permanent assignment for them, working in both South America and the Middle East as the Director of Strategic Operations. It was probably there that I spent the most time. But when our company decided to sell those assets, I returned back to the U.S. permanently and went into HR in a temporary assignment, doing talent acquisition, and then was asked to go to PSEG Fossil, where, by the way, I had the pleasure of meeting Sue Kidd, who's also on this panel. And from Fossil, I went back into the utility. First in material management, and then in process management, or I should say project management, I should say. And then as the director of a program in our projects and construction area. And then finally, where I am now as the senior director of electric transmission and distribution operations. So it's been a wild ride, but one that I wouldn't trade for anything in the world. It's just been an amazing opportunity.
I love that, a wild ride, right, Isabel? Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, via phone, let's hear from Lisa Hale and what she has to tell us about her career journey so far.
Thanks, Becky. I certainly did not plan on having a career in the utility industry. I went to college to get a degree in accounting and economics. And it just happened that I saw an announcement for an internship at a gas and water utility in the city where I was going to college. And so the rest is history. I started there with an internship. I got a job as an accountant there once I graduated. And then my career took a little bit different path, one that frankly, I was discouraged to take by the manager that I had at the time. I actually took a lateral move into the billing area to get a little bit of broader experience. So rather than staying the course, so to speak, and continuing on as an accountant, I took a lateral move and went as an assistant supervisor in the billing area. And from then on, I just continued to move into different areas to get a broader experience. Those areas included credit, billing, meter reading, all of those areas. And I guess I took that as an opportunity to kind of learn all I could about the business side of the house, so to speak. So I feel like it made me well positioned to take a position as a vice president, and which then I did eventually get. I spent 23 years in the gas and water industry, and then the last 8 years I have held a similar role as vice president of customer services at the electric utility in Lincoln, Nebraska. So that is my career path. It was a bit of a winding path, but that's how I got here today.
Well, it's a winding but a very successful path. And thanks for taking some risks on your own personal career development, which we're going to hear a little bit more about later. Next, Sarah, what do you have to share with us about your career journey so far?
Thank you, Becky. So I was nowhere. I decided to get into the electric industry like on a whim. I was like most high school students. I was going to be a nurse. I was going to be a nurse from the time like middle school on. I went to a few nursing classes. I got my CNA, and I was like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. So I was looking through the course catalog for the community college, and I was like, electric lineman program. I was like, let's do that one. And everyone thought I was crazy. They were like, you're going to do that? You're like, you've been the girliest girl all along. I did pageants and stuff. They're like, you're going to hate it. But I went through the course. I ended up getting on with Pike Electric right out of school. I worked my way up through the ranks. I became Pike's first female crew leader ever. It's just opened a lot of doors for me.
Wonderful. I love that. You know, nurse to crew leader, and now both essential services, even essential workers in the world today. So way to go, Sarah, and thank you. And last but not least, Sue. A few words from Sue Kidd.
Hi, I'm Sue Kidd. I'm the general manager of T&D Engineering, Project Management and Construction at Arizona Public Service. But like Isabella said, my career started 30 years ago as well as an intern. I was going to school for electrical engineering at NJIT in Newark, and I suddenly realized that I needed to figure out what I was going to do with that degree. And so I put my name in at the co-op office or the intern office. Happened to get a phone call from the local utility. My mom almost hung up on them because she thought it was like a vendor call. Ended up starting as an intern at Hudson Generating Station, which is a coal plant, which is now closed because all the coal plants in Jersey are now shuttered. Then got an opportunity even prior to getting out of school to get a job offer as a supervisor. Engineers could come in two paths back then, either go straight into leadership or go into the engineering area. I had more intestinal fortitude than most, so I felt I could actually pull off the supervisor job. I was this 22-year-old girl with crazy long rocker hair, and I was obviously shocking to them when I first got there. Most of them had more years of service than I had years of age. I then got a great opportunity when we went deregulated in the mid-90s to become a business analyst on the marketing and trading floor, which is a really great experience, especially in those days when the prices of energy were flying all over the place on the East. I then worked my way up through operations, then got moved to another plant to also run operations to broaden my experience outside of gas and oil into coal operations. I then got opportunities to do outage management a couple places, and then ended up going to plant management where
It appears that we might have lost Sue here. So let's move on. We'll hopefully try to get Sue back here real quickly, but let's now go to a question for all panelists. What is the biggest challenge you face or have faced as a woman in your career, and what have you done about it? And let's begin with Isabel. What would you like to share?
So I started in the utility business in the 1990s. It was a different world back then. And to say that I was tested is likely putting it mildly. I didn't have blonde rocker chick hair, but I was definitely a misfit. Not like everybody else. It was like one of these things is not like the other on Sesame Street. I think because I was different, because first of all, I was a woman in the utility, I think there were folks that just felt like I had to be tested on whether or not I really deserved to be there. And I remember specifically one test. I was, as an engineer, we were responsible for doing cable failures located and on off hours specifically. And I remember shooting a cable failure in the middle of the night in the middle of Elizabeth, New Jersey, which is a fairly urban city here in New Jersey. And we had to go down in a hole. We thought we had spotted the cable failure, had to go down in a hole to investigate it. And the crew popped open the hole, and the neck of the hole was literally crawling with roaches. It looked like it was moving as one with roaches. And I have to tell you that I was pretty freaked out. Kept it in, but I was pretty freaked out. One of the guys ran to the truck, got the broom, swept the hole so that all the roaches fell to about an inch of water at the bottom of the manhole, threw a ladder down and said, "Ladies first." And it was one of those pivotal moments. And we all know that our reputations sometimes are defined in very short little moments. And it was definitely one of those moments where I knew that if I faltered for even a second, if I hesitated for a moment, I would be the talk of the division as to, well, she's fine until she's got to go in a manhole with roaches. So I got up all my courage. I smiled, climbed down the ladder, did what I had to do, climbed back out of that ladder just as quickly as I could, and moved on. But it was definitely a learning experience for me as well, because the talk of the division was not that I hesitated. The talk of the division was that I was not to be tested. I was okay. So that one moment kind of stopped most of the tests from occurring. So it was definitely a learning experience and a valuable one that I haven't forgotten. We're all going to be tested. It's what we choose to do during those moments that really defines who we are and who we become as leaders in the organization.
Absolutely, and thank you. Thanks for going down into that manhole. That's a wonderful story. Well, you know what? That takes me right into a segment. That takes me right into our next panelist here. Sarah, what do you want to share with us about the big?
Manholes are a big part of my job. All the creepy crawly bugs, also a big part of my job. I work with some pretty big guys, and I'm a fairly small girl. So my challenge is letting them know that I can handle myself. I don't need you to come help me do this. I got it. Just being a woman in general, people are going to be like, oh, well, she needs help. Let's help her do this. I personally have to push myself out there, even beyond limits that I'm sure that I can do, just to prove that I can do them. About the people I work with in particular is they push me just as I push myself. I personally have not ran into a lot of the challenges that a lot of people run into. Everyone I work with is super supportive, and they make sure I succeed.
That's great, Sarah. And it's really good to hear that you have supporters out there that are helping make you be successful in your job. Sue, I think we got Sue back here.
Yes.
What is the biggest challenge that you face or have faced as a woman in your career journey?
Yeah, it's a great question. I remember when I went from being ops manager for a guy who was amazing supporter of women to a guy who I was kind of thrust upon, very old school boss. The very first time we had a boiler tube outage, he's like, "Oh, come on, Sue, let's go into the boiler." So I put my boiler suit on and we're walking down the hallway. And as we're walking down the hallway, all the other men that are leaders start gathering and following us towards the boiler. So we get all the way through and into the boiler and they all follow into the boiler. And so what I started to realize is that they didn't believe that I actually was going to climb the scaffold, right? It's like 80 something feet of scaffold that you have to climb up. And so I start climbing and we get to the first platform, which is like 15 feet up, and some of them start to leave. And then I climb up to the next platform, which is about 30 feet off the ground, and then more of them leave. And so I climb all the way up to the top. Well, even the boss who dragged me in there wouldn't climb to the top, because by the time you got to the top, the scaffold moves a lot. Imagine 80 something feet up on a ladder. It's got some motion up there. And so he wouldn't even climb up to the top. So it's me and this other guy, and we're doing an inspection of the boiler tubes. And then I climb back down. And the next morning, I'm in the morning meeting with all the other leaders. And this one guy, bless his heart, he says to me, he goes, "Sue, we were so proud of you for climbing the boiler yesterday." I'm like, "Thanks, Jim." I'm like, "Really?" So there's my girl test, which I think is a funny story because it just, Oh, and then I learned that the other guy climbed up the day before and wouldn't climb back down. So he climbed out the hole in the penthouse. So he didn't even climb down. I'm like, "Really?"
See, so you set the tone and you set the example for everyone, especially the women behind you. Great story, absolutely. And finally, Lisa, what's your experience on the biggest challenge you've had to face as a woman in the industry?
Although I haven't been in manholes or on scaffolding, I can say that I think a lot of things have improved for women in the 31 years I've been in the industry. But I guess my advice is to not box yourself in, and that, as obvious by this panel today, women can do anything, and look for those opportunities to demonstrate that your ability to do everything that's asked of you, and take those risks and go out there and show folks that you are capable of doing those things. And I've been in some pretty rough spots with doing meter reading and credit work and that sort of thing. But like I said, I've not had to jump down in a manhole or climb scaffolding, but as it's very obvious, women can do pretty much anything we set our minds to.
Absolutely. Thank you for that advice. Now, I'd like to ask each of our panelists specific questions based on initial interviews that I had with each of them. And I think we're going to start with Sarah. First of all, congratulations on your promotion to crew leader. What a great accomplishment, and well-deserved, I'm sure. What can you share with us about what you like most about your job today?
My favorite part of my day about my job is that every single day I have a new challenge, a new adventure. I don't ever do anything the same ever. I really enjoy, the guys I work with, they can do things a certain way, and I have to do it a completely different way just because I'm not as strong as they are, can't move my body the same way they can. So it's just really a new adventure and a new challenge every day. Every day I wake up and I'm like, okay, how am I going to tackle this challenge? How am I going to handle this situation? The great part about being a woman in this industry that I found out is I can talk to people a lot better than the guys I work with. So I get to meet a lot more people. I'll go talk to builders. They just receive me a lot better. So I get to kind of talk to people a little bit more than most of the people I work with.
So do your male counterparts then send you forward to go talk to the builders?
Oh, yes, 100%. The most recent one, the builder wasn't very nice to my boss. So my boss was like, "Sarah, we need you to go talk to him. I went up and talked to him. He's like, "Oh, I hope you guys have a great day. Be safe. Take your time. Don't worry about it." So
That's wonderful. It's just you being you, though, right?
that's all I can be.
Well, thank you, Sarah. Lisa, from your perspective as a vice president, you shared with me that it's important to you to select the right people for your team. Specifically, what qualities do you look for in potential employees to join your team?
That's a good question. I've always approached it that skills can be taught. Culture and personality fit can't be taught. So when we're looking for a new teammate, we pretty much focus on those two things. So what we do is we look at what our team happens to be lacking at a particular time. Is that someone who's analytical or more structured or conceptual, or maybe we need that person that can go out and talk to builders or, communicate new initiatives. So we look at what we're lacking or what we need more of on our team at that given point and go out and look for that fit. And then once they get on board, we can teach them the skills that we need them to have, such as, our billing system or, something that's more technical in nature. And then above all, we look for, integrity and accountability. If you don't have trust on your team, you really don't have a team. So I guess in a nutshell, we consider skills something that can be taught, and we look for that culture fit as well as that personality that we're looking for at that given time.
That's great advice. To me, a sign of a great leader is going out, identifying what those gaps are in your team and going out and getting those gaps, closing those gaps and finding talent to do that, because recognizing we all can't do everything. So good for you, Lisa. That's great. Sue, you shared with me that it's important to you to walk the talk. What guiding principles do you live by each day that demonstrate your belief in good leadership skills and actually walking the talk every day?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things that I do, I kind of this guiding principle for myself, which is to learn something new every day and teach something new every day. And sometimes it's valuable and sometimes it's not. But if you go through your life as a leader, continually not only learning yourself, showing that you're vulnerable and you don't know everything, but also giving the gift of teaching things to other people, whether it's sharing a good book that you read on leadership, or sharing something that you found on Instagram, or I found on LinkedIn, just to sit there and really help others to grow. I feel like I've spent a lot of time where I see people even at their frontline self, and I can see that there's potential in them. And so, helping those individuals to continue to grow. And I feel like you do that through, being open to helping others and to help them to continually to grow on their journey.
Wonderful. What a gift. What a gift that you can give to your team. Isabel, you shared with me that your career journey at PSE&G has resulted in you having careers within the same company. Kind of rare these days. Can you share your advice on taking risks in personal career development?
Yeah, again, great question. I think that it's really only in taking some of those risks that we truly grow as professionals, and certainly as human beings as well. And I'm not going to suggest or try to say that all risks are hazard-free and all risks are successful. I myself took a fairly big risk when I was asked to join an organization that I knew very little about. I was kind of really persuaded to take on the role. I was kind of hesitant to do that. And then kind of my mantra is always, why not? So I nodded myself into taking the role and quickly found out that I just wasn't a good fit. I wasn't a good fit in that organization. I wasn't a good fit in the role. And although I was really enjoying the learning experience from it, it became very obvious that I just was not going to be successful in that role, or certainly meet the expectations of that role that the leaders had for somebody in my position. So I had to cut my losses. I had to, be honest with myself and move on to something different, which for me meant actually taking a role at a lower level and pursuing. And I remember when I applied for it, the leader of that organization, who I knew very well, called me and said, this is a demotion for you, don't you? And I said, yeah, I know it's a demotion. But it was okay to take that demotion. It was really actually very beneficial for me because it gave me the time to kind of gather my thoughts and kind of gather my learnings from the experience, figure out what I wanted to do, and then move forward. So I have the privilege of saying I climbed the ladder twice because I've worked my way back up and actually above the level of the role that I was in when I decided to leave. So it's not that it's risk-free, taking on those risks. That's why they call them risks. But they really are such a valuable learning and development opportunity. And I highly encourage everyone to jump in with risk.
Great advice. Sometimes taking those risks like that in your career actually lead to other opportunities. And in your case, it really did. So good advice to our listeners out there. So we're going to go back to Sue here. Sue, this is a question about mentoring women. What do you personally do to promote and support career development for women at APS?
That's a great question. One of the things that I do first is that, I encourage us to make sure that we're at the front end, hiring more women. Engineering, obviously electrical engineering, still statistically very low on the number of women that are in electrical engineering, still like 18 or 19%. It's pretty close to statistically the same number as it was 30 years ago when I went to school. So the first thing I do is when I send the recruiters out to go get new rotational engineers, I encourage us to make sure that we're bringing back a diverse bench, because you cannot sit there and develop women into leadership, and especially in engineering, without first filling the pipe, right? Bringing them in from somewhere. So, encouraging us to bring on a very strong, diverse, both in gender and ethnicity, in that pipeline. But the other thing that I do is I have a group of what we call women in engineering that we meet with at a pretty regular basis, that we encourage them to mentor each other and teach each other things. So they have been on a development journey, reading several different books for a book club, continuing to work on helping them with their career journey, as well as really, spending time mentoring personally several women throughout the organization, which I think is super important, to be that person who is that person that will help them step out of the nest and fly on their own, and encourage them to take positions that they sometimes think are over their head at the time, and really encouraging them on the fact that you don't need to have every single thing that's on that particular application in order to sit there and get the job, and to encourage them to take those chances.
Thank you, Sue, for not only your focus on diversity, but also your willingness to personally mentor women. I know that can be both very rewarding for both you and for the recipients of your mentoring. So thank you for that. Lisa, what contributions do you see women being able to make to further enhance the energy industry?
That's a good question. I feel like diversity in our workforce is just, the only place that having that type of diversity makes it a better working environment. I feel like women, we are We do operate a little bit differently. I think that sometimes we are a little bit more open about admitting that we have things that take our time outside of the workforce, such as family or other commitments. And I think by doing that, we actually sometimes help our male counterparts to be okay with showing that they too have commitments outside of the workplace. And so I think we can kind of model maybe a healthier approach to, that work-life balance and showing and setting that good example of that there is more to life than just work, and that we have to have that work-life balance.
And you're especially right now with everyone working so virtually. And I've heard from many colleagues in the industry that, you're really you're never leaving the office now because your office is your home for a lot of folks in the industry. So it's even more important that we focus on taking that time away from our work life and focus on not only our families, but also our own well-being. So thank you for that, Lisa. Isabel? As a female Portuguese immigrant growing up in the energy industry and overcoming diversity barriers, what are you doing to ensure all employees have access to equal career development opportunities?
Yeah, I think some of what Sue mentioned is spot on and very much in line with the practices that I follow as well. I think the first thing is that, as I was saying earlier, I was one of those things that wasn't like the other. Having been challenged and having been tested, not just because of perhaps my being a female, but also because I am an immigrant. English is my second language. I'm horrible at those analogy things like raining cats and dogs. I can do that one, but don't ask me to do any others. All of them come out wrong. But I really try to ensure that some of the things that I had to go through aren't the same things that the folks now have to go through in order to be successful. So, I've heard my VP say that, and I think it's so spot on that my role now as a leader is ensuring that you don't have to be that tough. You don't have to endure as many tests, and you don't have to make perhaps as many sacrifices as I did in order to move forward and develop in your role, develop in your career, and develop as a leader in our organization. So I'm constantly trying. It's not just, the immigrant associates in our organization, but really females, anybody that feels a little more disenfranchised and a little more, not in the regular mix. It's making sure that even the introverts in the room, the folks that are kind of quiet, making sure that they have a voice and a seat at the table, and ensuring that I'm using my position to give them that opportunity to use their voice and use their opinion and use their learnings in order to contribute to us as an organization in moving forward. It's only through doing that we as an organization are truly successful, is if we engage every single associate, regardless of their background and their gender or anything else. It's only in really embracing and including diversity in our organizations that we are going to be successful. I believe that, and I live by that every day.
Thank you. Just a side question with that. Do you believe that most leaders in general follow that same philosophy?
I'm blessed to work in an organization where I get throughout our industry. It certainly is true for us in PSC&G. I am not alone in taking the position that I do. I think all of my colleagues, all of the senior directors, the VPs, certainly our CEO, I've heard our CEO come out and voice very strongly his position on embracing diversity and really on inclusivity, right? It's not just diversity. It's inclusivity of that diversity that's really key. So I'm going to say yes.
I appreciate that. Just kind of, this is a big topic, as we all know right now, on inclusivity and providing equal opportunities for folks. Just as a side note, Sue, Lisa, Sarah, do you see that same emphasis in your organizations, or can you any thoughts you have along those lines? Maybe I'll start with Sue.
Yeah, I've seen a humongous shift over the last decade. Joining Arizona Public Service, there was a really big push from the person who was our chief operating officer at the time to increase diversity, especially, getting some women into leadership, because it was thin. Middle management women, especially on the operational side of the business, was not the norm. And so over the last 10 years, I've done a tremendous amount of increases in leadership roles with women across APS. But to Izzy's point, I think the more important thing is that, we all felt like we were wanted and belonged and were needed at the table, as opposed to if you bring people in, but then you don't include them, it creates a pretty bad environment.
Okay, and Sarah, I ask you the same question, especially being the first female line person at Pike. Do you feel that there's an emphasis or a shift to really focus on inclusivity and diversity?
Yeah, like 100%. Pike is great about making sure that I have all the necessary things I need to be successful here. As far as linemen go, there's only 1% of the workforce that is female. And I'm lucky enough to work with 2 out of this office. So out of 1%, we have 3 working out of the same office. So they're really great about, they're really great about making sure that we feel wanted, included, like our voice matters. I have never had a problem if I can't do something a certain way and there's a tool out there that would make my job easier, they would get it for me.
That is wonderful. That's a great organization. I can see why you smile when you talk about working at Pike. Lisa, is there anything you'd like to add along that line of the whole focus on DE&I now?
No, I don't have a lot to add. I think it's kind of the same thing. I do have to say that the company that I work for now has done a tremendous job of expanding opportunities for women. Our administrative board is half women, as is our entire executive team is half women. So I think that we've come a long way in that regard. I do think that, as with many other companies, our focus on other types of diversity are continuing, and I think that everyone has the right attitude about that, and so I think that we're going to be continuing on that journey.
Wonderful. Sue, Lisa, Isabel, Sarah, thank you for offering your opinion and your perspective on that whole DE&I effort, because it really is very compelling. Sarah, I want to turn to you for your advice. So what advice would you give to women finishing high school to encourage them to consider a career such as yours?
Look towards the trades, because that wasn't even on my radar in high school. Like, not even close. I didn't even know that was an option. I think if there had been more like recruiting for high school students, that I might have chosen this before I did 3 years of nursing. But I didn't even know I was going to like it. I was discouraged from it. But it was just, I had one person that was like, you need to do it. You'll be good at it. You've got the leadership skills. You've got the perseverance. So all it took is one person to be like, just give it a try. So I think if we got more into schools and had people in like conferences like this, where we can get out there and tell women that it's a great industry to get into, and they don't have to worry about feeling like they don't belong or they're not included, like, because they do belong just as much as anybody else.
That's great. So if we at CWD push toward having a national spokesperson for the women in trades, would that be you?
Oh, sure. Go with it.
Yeah, I haven't talked to, I just made that up, okay? Just totally, hearing you speak, it just made me think about that because I think you'd be a great cheerleader, for women in the trade. So thank you for that. So one final question for each of our panelists. And the question is, what parting words or advice would you share with women considering a career in the energy industry? And I think, Isabel, we're going to start with you.
Well, I would say jump in with both feet. I think our industry is really changing these days. We are not the utility industry of our grandparents' age. We are getting into things like energy conservation and renewables and customer centricity. We are shaping much of the regulation and policy around emissions and about carbon emissions throughout the country. I think there are opportunities in our industry now that perhaps didn't exist when I first started. And yes, I started as an engineer. And as Sue said, we always love encouraging women to pursue engineering. I think it's such a wonderful, wonderful career choice for all women. But you don't have to be an engineer to join the utility these days. There are lots of opportunities in all kinds of different areas that really present themselves to all of us women, and that really lend themselves to women that perhaps want to have families and have a little more flexibility. We're, again, not the utility of yesteryear, and something that we can definitely be proud of is how our industry is evolving and welcoming women into the industry much more inclusively than we did in the past. So I absolutely would encourage them to do that.
Super. That's great. It's a great perspective and great advice. Sue, what words of wisdom do you have for us?
I think the first thing that I would say is that, don't be afraid to get your hands dirty, literally. I enjoyed so much starting out my career where I was running around power plants, fixing stuff with my guys. Be bold. Don't worry about trying to work on your career ladder. That's not a real thing anymore. If you think about jobs that, were from the past, they've transformed to totally different roles. And, I was a firm believer through my whole career, if people were giving me an opportunity, as long as it wasn't going to kill me, to take it. So I did plenty of, lateral moves, all over the place, both going horizontally and going vertically in my career path. I think it's important to have, a career lattice. The broader your foundation is, the better you'll be, right? Because there's more opportunity as you continue up throughout the company's career path. And so, my biggest thing is, don't be afraid. I heard a quote once, don't be afraid of opportunity. It's work dressed in coveralls. I'm not sure who said it, but, I always think, take those chances. Some of the best opportunities I got was just people tapping me on the shoulder, giving me an opportunity to either work on projects or buy power plants. At one point, I got a lot of cool things that are within my 2 companies worth of my career so far. And so I would just say be bold.
Absolutely. And, I've had a similar career journey to several of you and I totally agree with all of you about being bold, taking a risk, taking a chance. Sometimes it's not always about the upward mobility. Sometimes you have to go laterally in order to move up and not always be focused on that next job, type of thing. Your good work, your good performance will get you that next job. So great advice, Sue. Sarah, what advice would you share with women considering a career in the energy industry?
It kind of goes along with what everyone else said. Don't be afraid. A lot of the walls that are put up in front of us, we're going to have to take down ourselves, even if it's brick by brick. So it's just making sure that each day you're proving to yourself, most of all, that you belong here and you can do it, and don't let anyone discourage you from feeling that way.
Well, you're a perfect example of that, as our cheerleader of women in the trades. Thank you for that. And last but not least, Lisa, what advice would you offer?
Besides all the wonderful advice that has been given so far, I would also encourage folks or women to find a mentor and in the industry. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a woman, but, I think there are plenty of wonderful female mentors out there right now. I would also say network and do your research and read all there is to know. There's so much information online. Use it. And then again, just like everyone else said, don't box yourself in. Women can hold any role that they choose, and look for a utility. I mean, when you're out there looking for jobs, I think you can look to the leadership of a utility to get an idea of whether or not they value diversity, equity, and inclusion. And obviously that's an organization where you want to be.
That is outstanding advice. Thank you so much for that, Lisa. It's been interesting. I've been keeping notes here on some of the things that all of you said about, I took a job on a whim. It's been a wild ride. I was involved with creepy crawly bugs. I was the blonde bike rocker chick type thing. Just wonderful, wonderful takeaways from all this. But I think some of the best advice is about being bold and don't be afraid. There's a great opportunities out there, and find that mentor, find that network of people that can certainly help you grow in your career. So I'd like to, at this point, thank all of our panelists and those of you who have joined us for today's session. As you just heard, there are many great career opportunities and career paths for women in energy. There's no one direct path. We all kind of make that path on our own. It has truly been a pleasure to share our pride and passion for what we do and inspire all women listeners to consider a job in the energy industry. While this session is concluded, the information and opportunities here at Energy Careers 2020 will continue. I hope you'll take the time to check out the exhibit hall and talk with companies to learn more about the industry and jobs that might be open, especially current jobs and internship opportunities. In particular, one booth I would encourage you to visit is hosted by Women in Energy. Thank you, Women in Energy, for your partnership and support of women in our industry. You can also visit our chat rooms to connect with other industry ambassadors who will very gladly answer any questions you might have. So enjoy the rest of your time at Energy Careers 2020, and thank you for listening today.